So the next topic we have is reflection of light on the basis of Huygens theory, or we can also call it as wave theory. Okay, that means what we are going to do over here is we are going to prove the laws of reflection of light depending upon the Huygens theory. Okay, in the ray optics we have already seen the laws of reflection. The first law of reflection is that the incident ray, the normal where the ray is made incident, and the reflected ray all lie in the same plane. This is the normal generalized law, the first law. Okay, the second law was what? The second law was the angle of incidence is always equal to the angle of reflection. This was the second law. So this law we are going to prove now. The angle of incidence is equal to the angle of reflection. This particular law we are going to prove now using the Huygens theory or the wave theory. Okay, so for this reason I am going to consider a reflecting surface xy. So let me consider a reflecting surface over here xy. Say this is x, y. So this is the reflecting surface. So let me shade it on one side. Okay. So now let us consider there are two parallel rays of light which are coming and becoming incident on this reflected surface xy. Okay. So let us consider there are two rays S and H dash which are coming from a point source, okay, which are coming from far away point source, and they are made incident on this reflecting surface. Okay, so first is coming as S. Okay, let's say that this ray has come, okay, over here and is made incident at this point over here. By that time this ray has come from the far away object and reached over here. Okay, so maybe the source is over here somewhere, very far. Okay, and the two rays are coming from t is equal to 0, and at time t is equal to some t1, let's say at some time t1 this ray has already reached the reflecting surface xy, and this ray has reached over here at this point. Okay, so these rays are S and S dash. So S has reached the reflecting surface and S dash has reached over here. So let me draw the arrows. Okay, so obviously as the two rays has started from a common source, obviously they must have formed a wavefront, a spherical wavefront. But since we have come very far, since these rays have progressively come very far from the source, obviously this spherical wavefronts will now become a plane wavefront. Are you understanding this? So this spherical wavefront will turn into the plane wavefront since these rays have advanced very far from this point source now. Okay, so if I intend to draw this plane wavefront at this point, how will I have to draw it? We know that the plane wavefront or any kind of wavefront is always perpendicular to the ray of light. So if I want to draw a wavefront over here at this point, incident wavefront let us call it, that incident wavefront will always be perpendicular to the rays. Okay, so let's draw that wavefront. So if I want to draw a wavefront over here, how will that wavefront look like? Wavefront will be perpendicular over here. So let me draw something like this, which is 90 degrees. That means what? The other ray which is coming, okay, the other ray which is coming must have reached at this point. That is quite understood because it has to be perpendicular to both the rays. So this becomes our incident wavefront. This becomes the incident wavefront. So let us say that this point is, so this is S we had considered, this was S dash. This point over here let us consider is B, and this point over here let us consider as A. So this becomes, so AB becomes incident wavefront. Okay, So now obviously we want to prove that angle of incidence is equal to angle of reflection. So I'll have to draw a normal over here. So let us draw a normal at this point over here. This is going to be my normal. Let us say this normal is n. This normal is going to be 90 degrees to the surface xy. Okay. So this is going to become my angle of incidence here. This is going to become my angle of incidence. So by geometry, automatically see, this is 90 degrees. Again, this is going to be 90 degrees. This is going to be 90 degrees. So automatically what will happen over here is this angle by geometry is going to be I. This is I, this is 90 degrees. So basically this is going to be 90 minus I. So if you see, this total is 90 degrees. This yellow color angle is 90 degrees. This one side is I. So other side will become 90 minus I. On the other side, supposing this total red color is 90 degrees. This is I. So this is 90 minus I. So this has to be I. Okay. I'll repeat this one more time. Supposing this angle is 90. This total angle is 90 over here. And this angle over here is the I. So this has to be 90 minus I. Now this angle is also 90. And out of this angle, this is 90 minus I. So this has to be equal to I. Okay, so using this logic, this angle is equal to this angle. So this angle becomes I over here. Okay. So you have seen that by now we have seen that this ray S has reached the point B. This is already incident on the XY. So now this is ready to get reflected. Okay. And ray S dash has reached S till now, has reached point A till now. Okay, it has not reached our reflecting surface as yet. Okay. Okay, so in the next step, what is going to happen is we are going to produce this ray now. So let us consider a specific time t. Okay, let us consider a specific time t, and let us say that in time t, this ray will get reflected and go away, and this ray will continue itself till this point. Okay, so now we know that these rays are traveling in the air. So they are traveling with the speed of light, that is c. So speed with which these two rays are traveling are going to be same. So they are traveling with the speed c. Okay, and let us say that they are traveling in the further now. They are traveling further now. Okay, and let us see where they have reached in time t now. Okay, so according to the Huygens principle, this is our incident wavefront. So what do we know? Every point on this incident wavefront is going to behave like independent source of disturbance. So they are going to form its own secondary wavelets. Again, this is going to increase. These wavelets are going to increase this side. This point's wavelets are going to increase this side. So let us say that at time t, this is the wavelet. This particular is the wavelet for this point B, and this is the particular wavelet for this point A after time t. Okay, so that simply means that in time t, the ray SB has been reflected from the surface and has reached, is reflected from the surface and has reached maybe some point over here. Okay, and what is happening to the ray S dash A? In the same time t, this S dash A has reached on the reflected surface or reflecting surface XY. Are you getting this? In time t, before, supposing the original time t is equal to 0, at time t is equal to 0, where were the two rays? The S ray was at B and S dash ray was at A. But after some time t, what is happening now? That the ray SB has already reflected and has reached on top somewhere over here at this point, and S dash A has reached down on the surface XY, the reflecting surface XY. Okay, so I can say from here, I can say that supposing B has reached, let's name the points. Okay, let us name the points. So let's say that this B has reached some point D over here. Let's name it as D. Okay, and this A has reached over here to some point C. Okay, let's produce this more, the reflecting surface XY. Okay, so B has reached till D and A has reached till C. Let's mark the arrows also. So can we say over here that BD will be equal to AC, because in time t the ray SB has reflected and reached at point D, and in time t S dash A has continued its path to reach at point C. So eventually what is going to happen over here is BD will be equal to AC, because they are covering the same distance. Why they are covering the same distance? Because by the formula, speed is equal to distance upon time. What will be distance covered by them? Distance covered by them will be equal to speed multiplied by time. The speed with which both of them are traveling is the speed of light, that is c, which we had considered, and the time in which they are traveling we have considered as t. So they are covering a distance of c multiplied by t. Both of them are covering a distance of c multiplied by t. Okay, so BD will be equal to AC, which will be equal to C multiplied by T. So obviously now this AC has reached the surface, so now it is ready to take off. It is ready to get reflected now. Okay, so we'll require a normal over here. So let's draw a normal. Let's draw a normal over here. So let us name those normals also for our understanding. Let's say that this normal was n, right? Let's say this is n dash. So what is going to happen? This is going to get reflected now. So let me draw a reflected ray over here. So if I want to draw a reflected wavefront over here, what should happen? This reflected wavefront has to be perpendicular to the reflected rays. So how the reflected wavefront will look like? This was my incident wavefront, AB, the yellow line which you can see over here was the incident wavefront. So how the reflected wavefront will look like? The reflected wavefront will look something like this. Something like this. That means it is going to be perpendicular to both the reflected rays. So this reflected ray is going to go away like this, and this reflected ray is going to go like this side. Okay, and this is going to be your wavefront, which is perpendicular to the reflected ray. So this angle is going to be 90 degrees. So obviously this angle is going to be angle of reflection. So using the same logic, this angle over here is going to be the angle of reflection. See, this is 90 degrees. Similarly, this is also 90 degrees. So since this is R, this has to be equal to R by geometry. So now we can say that DC is going to be the reflected wavefront. This is going to be the reflected wavefront over here. Okay, so now let us see how can we prove it now. So I'll write over here. Okay, so now if you see, my angle of incidence over here is this. So let me just mark the two angles properly, which is going to be my angle of incidence and which is going to be my angle of reflection. So this entire thing is going to be my angle of incidence here, and this is going to be my angle of reflection. Okay, so I is the angle of incidence over here and R is the angle of reflection. So if I consider triangle ABC, if I consider triangle ABC, just see this triangle and find out the value of sine of I, angle I, what is it going to be? It is going to be the opposite side, that is AC, upon the hypotenuse. So this is 90 degrees, so hypotenuse is going to be BC. So see the triangle ABC. So sine of I is going to be opposite, that is AC, upon the hypotenuse, that is BC. If I consider the triangle, if I consider the next triangle, that is DCB, okay, this is going to be 90 over here. And if I write down the sine of R, it is going to be opposite, that is BD, upon the hypotenuse, that is BC. Just see this triangle, BDC, okay. So it is going to be opposite side, that is BD, upon the hypotenuse, that is BC over here, okay. So if I take the ratio of the two, sine of I upon sine of R will be equal to AC upon BC is equal upon BD upon BC. So what will happen is BC will get cancelled. Also we have seen over here that BC is equal to BD is equal to AC, okay. So we can cancel this also. So what you will see, this will be equal to 1. That means sine of I will be equal to sine of R. That means what? It simply means that angle I will be equal to angle R in this case, okay, which proves your law of reflection, that is angle of incidence is equal to angle of reflection. So this is your proof of reflection of light, or proving law of reflection of light using wave theory or Huygens theory. Okay, so now let us go through the law of refraction. So we are going to prove a law of refraction over here on the basis of Huygens wave theory. So here we are going to consider a refracting surface. There will be an interface between the two mediums. So let me draw an interface over here. So let us say this is the interface. Let's take it as P dash. So this is the separation between the two mediums over here. So let us see the above medium is a rarer medium, okay, having a refractive index of mu1, and the down one is the denser medium having a refractive index of mu2. Let us say that the speed of light in the first medium is v1 and the speed of light in the second medium, let us say, is v2. Okay, so if we consider the speed of light in the first medium, that is the rarer medium, as v1 and the speed of light in the denser medium as v2, it's quite obvious that v1 will be greater than v2 because light travels faster with a higher speed in the rarer medium as compared to the denser medium. That is what we have studied in the ray optics, correct? So v1 will obviously be greater than v2. Okay, so now again let us consider the two rays of light which are coming from a source. Okay, so one ray of light is already incident, let's say, and one has reached the halfway. So let's first draw the incident wavefront over here, which is going to be perpendicular. So this is going to be the incident wavefront which is perpendicular to both the rays. So you have to draw this figure in the steps. Okay, so this is going to be the second ray which is coming, which has to be perpendicular. So this has to be perpendicular. So yellow line which you see over here is nothing but the incident wavefront. Okay, so let's mark these 2 points which we require. So let this point be A, let this point be B. We require a normal over here. So this is going to be my angle of incidence. So naturally this becomes the angle of incidence 2. Angle equal to angle of incidence, not angle of incidence. So this becomes angle equal to the angle of incidence 2. So let us say that in time t, we'll see the next wavefront now. So this every point on this wavefront is going to behave like its independent disturbance and produce its own wavefront in front like this. All the points will produce its own wavefront. So we'll see in time t where do we get a wavefront. Okay, so let us consider that in time t that the first ray is already getting refracted because it has already reached over here. So this ray will get refracted from here. So let us draw the refracted ray. Since it is going from a rarer medium to a denser medium, the ray is going to bend towards the normal. Okay, we have to use every logic over here. So since the ray is going from a rarer medium to denser medium, the ray is going to bend towards the normal. That is, the angle of incidence over here will be more than the angle of refraction. So let us say in time t it has reached somewhere over here. Now again, the point to be noted over here is the speed of this ray is going to be becoming lesser, because now the ray has entered a denser medium. So if it was coming in a higher speed over here, now the speed is going to reduce as it enters the denser medium. Okay, so as it is entering the denser medium, its speed is going to reduce now, and angle of refraction will be lesser than the angle of incidence. So this is going to be your angle of refraction. In the same time t, so this is reached to a point, let's say E. In the same time t, this is going to continue the straight path because it has not encountered the interface till now. So this is going to continue the same path, and let us consider that it has reached the interface in time t. Okay, and it has reached over here at point C. So we will require a normal over here also. Okay, so if I want to draw a refracted wavefront over here, we'll have to draw a perpendicular line which is perpendicular to both the refracted ray. So let us see, it is this ray gets refracted. So this gets refracted in this direction. It will be obviously parallel to this ray. Okay, it is obviously going to be parallel to this ray which we have already drawn, refracted ray, something like this. Both the refracted ray has to be parallel. Okay, because the angle of incidence is same, the medium is same. Okay, so this has to be refracted ray. So if I want to draw a perpendicular over here, a wavefront, a reflected wavefront, it will be something like this, which is normal to both of them. It should be normal to both of them. So my EC becomes the refracted wavefront. Okay, so I will write it over here. I will write it over here. My AB is incident wavefront, and EC is refracted wavefront. So let us see how much distance they have covered. How much distance they have covered? We are going to use the same formula over here. Speed is equal to distance upon time. Speed is equal to distance upon time. So distance will be equal to speed multiplied by time. Okay. So now the distance traveled by the ray AE will be what? The speed of AE. So what is going to be the speed of AE? It is already in the second medium now, and the speed in the second medium is V2. Correct? So speed multiplied by time is going to be the distance traveled, that is AE. So what is going to be AE equal to? So AE, I'll write over here, AE will be equal to the speed of AE, that is going to be V2, multiplied by time we have considered as T. Okay, and the distance traveled by BC in the first medium in the same time T. In the same time T, A is reaching E and B is reaching C. Okay, so the distance traveled by BC will be equal to what? The speed with which BC is traveling, that is in the first medium it is V1, multiplied by the time in which it is reaching, that is same, which is T. So AE will be equal to V2T and BC will be equal to V1T. Now in this case, AE and BC will not be equal. The distances traveled by them will not be equal. Why? Because the speed is different. The speed in the second medium is different and the speed in the first medium is different. That is why the distances traveled will not be same. The distances traveled are going to be different. Okay. Now, again using geometry, this angle is angle of refraction R over here. By using geometry, we can say that this angle over here is also going to be equal to R. Because if you see, this is going to be the exterior angle, this total angle is going to be the exterior angle, it is going to be 90 plus R. And this is already 90, so this has to be R, because this total has to be 90 plus R. So this is 90 because normal with the interface is making 90. So 90 plus r. So this obviously has to be r. Okay. So if this is x, this has to be x. By that logic, if this is r, this will be r. Okay. So this is r over here. So let's start with the derivation now. So first you have to write down the description of the figure, draw the figure. Description is provided in the notes. Write down AB is the incident wavefront, EC is the refracted wavefront, what is AE, what is BC, and let us start with the derivation now. Okay. So first I will consider triangle ABC and write down the same way. I will write down sine of I. So sine of I will be equal to what? It will be equal to opposite, that is BC, upon the hypotenuse, that is AC, because this is going to be 90 degrees. So opposite to the 90 degrees is my hypotenuse. Let us consider the next triangle. So consider triangle ACE. Again use sine of R in this triangle ACE. Sine of R is going to be opposite, that is AE, upon hypotenuse, that is AC, because this is 90 here. So AE upon AC. Let us take the ratio. Sine of I upon sine of R is equal to what? BC upon AC upon AE upon AC. What we need to do over here is we need to find out we have to prove the law of refraction, that is nothing but the Snell's law. Sine of I upon sine of R is equal to refractive index of second medium with respect to the first medium. Okay, that is the law of refraction, that is the Snell's law. The sine of I upon sine of R is equal to constant, which is equal to the refractive index of second medium with respect to first medium. That is what we are proving here. Okay, so now what will happen? AC will get cancelled. This will be BC upon AE. What is BC? BC is V1T. What is AE? AE is V2T. So TT will get cancelled. I will get V1 upon V2. That means sine of I upon sine of R will be equal to V1 upon V2. Okay. If I multiply and divide by C over here, what will I get? This will be equal to C upon V2 multiplied by V1 upon C. What will be C upon V2? Speed of light upon speed in the medium 2. It will be refractive index of the second medium, that is mu2 according to our formula. And V1 upon C will be what? 1 upon mu1, that is mu2 upon mu1. So that will be nothing but equal to mu2 1, that is refractive index of second medium with respect to first medium. Okay, so this is nothing but the Snell's law. We have already learned this. So what is Snell's law? Sine of I upon sine of R is equal to refractive index of second medium with respect to first medium. That is what we proved using the basis of Huygens wave theory. So if I want to express this formula, that is V1 upon V2 in terms of lambda. So what do I know? That velocity is nothing but distance travelled, that is wavelength, multiplied by the frequency. And what will be V2? The distance travelled, wavelength in the second medium, multiplied by the frequency in the second medium. But frequency in both the mediums is same. Frequency does not change as the ray of light travels from one medium to other medium. The frequency remains unchanged. So mu and mu, it won't be mu1 and mu2. Frequency is not going to change over here. Okay, the wavelength is going to change. Wavelength will become lambda 1 and lambda 2. So I want to express this sin I upon sin r is equal to V1 upon V2. I can also write it in terms of lambda, that is in terms of wavelength. How will I write it in terms of wavelength? I can say that sine of I will write it down here. I can say that sine of I upon sine of R will be equal to V1 upon V2, which can also be written as lambda 1 upon lambda 2. That is the ratio of their wavelengths. So from here we can also say, for problems we can use this relation also, that is V1 upon lambda 1 will be equal to V2 upon lambda 2. This relation can also be utilized in the problems. Okay, so when the wave gets refracted from a denser medium, in a denser medium, goes from a rarer medium to denser medium, in that case we know that V1 will be greater than V2. That is, speed of light in the first medium will be greater than the speed of light in the second medium. We can also say from here that lambda 1 will be greater than lambda 2. That is, the wavelength of the light in the rarer medium will be greater than the wavelength of light in the denser medium. But the frequency will remain unchanged. As the light travels from rarer to denser or denser to rarer, the frequency is going to remain unchanged. This is what we need to remember here. So this is how we prove the Snell's law. That is, sine of I upon sine of R is equal to refractive index of second medium with respect to first medium using Huygens wave theory. Okay, so if we consider the case wherein the ray travels from a denser medium to rarer medium, it is going to be exactly same. Only thing is the figure will change a little bit because angle of incidence has to be smaller than the angle of refraction. Because since it is going in the denser medium, the angle of refraction will be more than the angle of incidence. Okay, so that has to be taken care. The figure will remain exactly same, and in the same manner you can prove that sine of I upon sine of R is equal to n21, which will be equal to mu 2 or n2 upon n1. You also use mu as a refractive index. That is, mu 21 will be equal to mu 2 upon mu 1. This can also be proved. Only thing over here is the speed of light in the denser medium is always less. So V1 will be lesser than V2, or V2 will be greater than V1. Okay, that is the thing over here. B is going to be your incident wavefront, EC is going to be refracted wavefront, everything is going to remain same. So in the similar manner we can also prove that when ray goes from a denser to rarer medium, okay, in that case also the Snell's law is true. That is, sine I upon sine R is equal to n21, that is n2 minus n1, refractive index of second medium with respect to first medium. Now what is going to happen if your angle of incidence is a critical angle? Okay, it's again the same thing. If your angle of incidence becomes equal to the critical angle, what do we know about angle of refraction? Angle of refraction is 90 degrees. So sine of IC upon sine of 90 degrees, sine of 90 degrees will be the refractive index of second medium with respect to the first medium. Sine of 90 will be 1. So in that case, what can we say? Sine of IC will be equal to refractive index of second medium with respect to the first medium. Okay, if I becomes greater than IC, what will happen in that case? What will happen in that case? There will not be a refracted ray. There will be a total internal reflection happening in that case. So if I becomes greater than IC, there will not be any refraction happening. There will be a total internal reflection. There will be a total internal reflection resulted over here. So we'll do the questions, the numericals which are given on the notes. The first numerical. So all those numericals, the first 4 numericals are based on this formula which we are already aware about. Only this one we just now saw. We revised it again. So we'll see the question number 1. So according to question number 1, monochromatic light of wavelength 600 nanometer. So wavelength of the light is given to us as 600 nanometer, which is going to be 600 into 10 raised to 9 meters, minus 9 meters, is incident from air on a glass surface. What are the wavelength, frequency and the speed of light? Refractive index of glass is given as 1.5. So we have the refractive index over here. We have the speed of light in the air, that is 3 into 10 raised to 8. So using that and using lambda, we can first find out the frequency of this monochromatic light. So what will be the frequency? We can use the formula C is equal to lambda into mu. So C is 3 into 10 raised to 8, that is speed of light in air, which will be equal to, the wavelength in air is given to us 600 into 10 raised to minus 9 multiplied by frequency of that monochromatic light. So frequency of light will come as 5 into 10 raised to 14 hertz. Okay, so we got its frequency. Now we need to find out the velocity of the refracted light. How will we get the velocity of refracted light? We know that the refractive index is given by speed of light in air, we can use this formula, upon speed of light in medium, that is in glass. So refractive index is given to us as 1.5 is equal to 3 into 10 raised to 8 into V of glass. So from here we'll get V, that is speed of light in glass, will be equal to 2 into 10 raised to 8 meters per second. And finally we need to find out the wavelength of light in the medium, in the glass. So we can use the formula again, that is we can use the formula mu is equal to lambda upon lambda dash, because lambda is known, that is wavelength in air is known to us, mu that is known to us again. Or you can use the formula velocity in glass. Velocity in glass will be equal to speed in the glass, speed in the glass will be equal to lambda in the glass multiplied by the divided by the time, that is frequency. Okay, so that is going to be lambda in the glass. I need to find out lambda in the glass over here. V glass upon mu. So speed of light in the glass we just now found out, 2 into 10 raised to 8 upon the frequency we have already found out, it is 5 into 10 raised to 14. Okay, so the answer will be 400 into 10 raised to minus 9, that is 400 nanometer. That is going to be the answer for the first one. Question number 1. Let us go to the question number 2. The refractive index of diamond is 2.47. So mu for diamond is given as 2.47, and that of a window glass, so refractive index of glass is given to us as 1.51. How much faster does a light travel in window glass than in the diamond? So we need to find out velocity of light in the glass, and we need to find out velocity of light in the diamond, and we need to find out the difference in this speed. Okay, so we can use the formula refractive index of diamond will be given by speed of light in air divided by speed of light in the diamond. So speed of light in diamond will be speed of light in air divided by refractive index of diamond. So 3 into 10 raised to 8 divided by 2.47. So you will get the speed of light in diamond as 1.215 into 10 raised to 8 meters per second. Similarly, we can find out the speed of light in glass, that will be equal to speed of light in air divided by refractive index of speed of light in air divided by refractive index of glass. Okay, substitute, should be equal to 3 into 10 raised to 8 divided by 1.51. You will get the answer as 1.987 multiplied by 10 raised to 8 meters per second. So what is the difference in speed? It is going to be speed of light in glass minus speed of light in diamond, because diamond is more dense, so speed will be lesser. Okay, so it is going to be 1.987 multiplied by 10 raised to 8 minus 1.215 multiplied by 10 raised to 8. This will be equal to 7.72 multiplied by 10 raised to 7 meters per second. Okay, so thus the light travels 7.72 multiplied by 10 raised to 7 meters per second faster in the window glass than in the diamond. It will be this much faster in the window glass than in the diamond. Let us see question number 3 now. Calculate a time which light will take to travel normally through a glass plate of thickness 1 mm. Refractive index of glass is given to us as 1.5. The thickness of the glass is given to us as 1 mm, and the velocity of light is c is 3 into 10 raised to 8 meters per second. We need to find out how much time it will take to pass through 1 mm plate. Okay, so first we'll have to find out velocity of light in that glass. having a refractive index of 1.5. So how will we find out? We know that mu is equal to C upon V in glass. So mu is given as 1.5. This will be 3 into 10 raised to 8 divided by V of glass. So speed of light in the glass is given by 2 into 10 raised to 8 meters per second. So thickness of the glass plate is given as 1 mm, that is 1 into 10 raised to minus 3 meters. So this is the distance it has to cover with this much speed. So we can easily find out the time using speed is equal to distance upon time. So time will be equal to distance upon speed. So distance will be 1 into 10 raised to minus 3 meters. Speed is 2 into 10 raised to 8 meters per second. So in this case, we will get it as 5 into 10 raised to minus 12 seconds. In this much time, the light will travel through that 1 mm slab of glass. The next question is, white light consists of wave of the wavelength between, the wavelength is given between 400 nanometer to 700 nanometer. This is the range of wavelength given for a white light. What will be its wavelength range if the light goes through water having a refractive index of 1.33? So refractive index of that white light in the air is known. When the white light travels into water, what is going to be its wavelength? And the refractive index of water is given to us. So lambda, first let us consider as 400 nanometer, and we'll have to find out the wavelength in water. Okay, so we know the refractive index. So mu is given by what? It is given by lambda upon lambda in water, lambda in air upon lambda in water, ratio of the wavelengths from the derivation which we just now did. So mu is given to us, that is 1.33, which will be equal to 400 into 10 raised to minus 9 upon lambda in water. So lambda in water for the 400 nanometer you will get as 300 into 10 raised to minus 9, so 300 nanometer. Similarly, now the lambda is going to be 700 nanometer in air. So we'll have to find out what is going to be in water. So same formula again. So mu will be equal to lambda upon lambda in water. So we can use 1.33 will be equal to 700 nanometers divided by lambda in water. So now it is going to be 525 nanometers. So for the corresponding range of 400 nanometer to 700 nanometer, the range in water is going to be 300 nanometer to 525 nanometers. So thus you can say thus the wavelength of white light, in water varies from 300 nanometer to 525 nanometer. I just found out for in air it is 400 nanometer. So for water what will be, how much it will be converted into, and when it was 700 how much it will be converted into, and then the new range in water will be from 300 nanometer to 525 nanometer.